Hello, everybody. So there has been a war on neutrality here in Ireland by the mainstream media, by the government, by NGOs, of course, and obviously by NATO and stuff like that. They're desperate for Ireland to join. They really want Ireland in NATO. And the other thing too, as we all know, the Irish government, we have to be honest, we have to call a spade here. The reason why the Defence Forces and the Air Corps and the Naval Service is the way it is at the moment. They couldn't have underfunded it and have it in such disrepair, the armed forces at the moment, if they didn't have another goal. They have another agenda in their head, the Irish government. And that is they want to be part of a European army. That's why they don't want their own army. They want to be part of a European army. And we see this time and time again. We see the naval ships docked in port with nobody to be put on them. We see this in the Air Corps. There's not enough maintenance on aircraft and helicopters too. We see this even in the army. There's not enough even people to send overseas and to peacekeeping missions. We see this time and time again. And the only reason would be is the Irish government they don't want an armed force and they don't want anything to do with sovereignty at all, as Micheál Martin said. And to be totally honest, having an armed forces is basically being a sovereign. You have your way of defending yourself, your sovereign country. You have your own right to defend yourself if something happens. You have your armed forces. Basically, that's one thing the government of this country don't like, and particularly the mainstream media too. They don't like anything Irish sovereignty at all. If they got away with it, they wouldn't have an Irish flag, let's be fair. They wouldn't even have a national anthem. They would change it to someone else. They just hate the country. Let's be fair. The Irish government just hate us. They hate Paddy and they hate Joe. They hate Mary. They don't like They don't like their own people. Let's put it that way. They're the enemies of the people. To be totally honest at this stage, the government in this country, because we see this again. It perfectly makes sense now. To be totally honest, that they're just underfunding it. Because again, if you look at the defence forces at the moment and the mainstream media jumping up and down every day of the week, and the government jumping up and down saying we should join NATO and stuff like that. In what reality? Look at the Defence Forces in the moment. They can barely keep any men in the Defence Force, or any women. It's basically, it's a shadow of its former self. Because the government policy and things like that. So obviously that's another thing. And I just want to touch briefly too on what the President Higgins said. Even though I don't agree with him, I don't think he's much addition, President Higgins. Michael A. Higgins, excuse me. I don't think he's any addition, to be told. He's not much addition in many circumstances. He signs things in without question. But he's a part of the problem too, to be totally honest. But I do agree with him on this, that we are playing with fire here. We are literally playing with fire. We're playing with our own sovereignty. We are playing with it. We're playing into other people's hands too, and other people's agendas. There's other people's agendas in Europe. That is people that we don't see behind the scenes that would benefit from Ireland joining NATO and stuff like that. And again, this is the thing. Majority, I think it's nearly probably being the 80%, probably going to 90% of people in the country, the only Irish Joe, are not interested in really going off if there's a war and fighting for NATO or fighting for any country. They want to keep out of it, and that's been the Irish policy, and it served the state well. As you know yourself, in World War II and stuff like that, we did face consequences, of course, but none of our sons and daughters were sent off to the battlefield, unless they joined the British Army, obviously, during the war. Things like that, but Ireland stayed, was relatively unharmed. And that's what we want. We don't want our sons and daughters to be dying in a European battlefield for very little to do with Ireland. And we just don't want to be a part of it. It's about that. We just don't want to be a part of it. And it's something that served the state well. I'm sure people have agreed. And even just looking at Irish contributions to the United Nations and peacekeeping, humanitarian aid and stuff like that, to other countries, war-torn countries and stuff like that, it basically tells you all you need to know, that Ireland is a peace-loving country that wants peace on the planet and doesn't want to get involved in the military alliance. Doesn't want to get involved in any kind of military alliance. And it has served the state well up until now. So I do agree with the President on that, and hopefully his views to be. But the one thing is good, it's kind of started the public debate on it, which is obviously good in the democracy. But the Irish government, this is the next part. Sorry if I'm jumping up and down here everywhere. There's a lot to talk about here. The Irish government, we all know, they're trying to sneak it in, like the hate speech bill. They say, it's for this, that, and the other. But when you read into the detail, the fine print underneath, the small print underneath the envelope, you can read that the Irish government just wants to shut people up who question the government. That's basically the line that's in the bottom of the paper that nobody would look at. They look at the big writing saying, we're going to tackle people that are hating on different people and stuff like that. And that's all well and good, obviously. But the bottom line is the dangerous part when you can't see the small writing at the bottom saying that the Irish government will have the power to censor anybody at the moment's notice if they deem it hate speech, but it doesn't define what it is. It just defines for the greater good. For who? Which is the greater good? For what? For Leo? For me whole? Who? Who does it benefit? The Irish people, the general public, the NGOs, the mainstream media? Who? We have to ask these questions because the media won't ask it. It's the same with everything. And the same with NATO. They're trying to sneak it in. They're doing the kind of conference at the moment, international the security conference, I suppose. And only for the president kind of making light of it. Not many people probably would have knew about it. But they're kind of looking at different scenarios and different things like that. And obviously the public would have been hellbound. Like, we all know the government just don't give a shit what people take in this country. They get, like the same with the hate speech, people overwhelmingly against it. Well, not as much obviously as the neutrality, but in some cases it's up on probably 70% into the 80%. And neutrality is probably into the 90% of general public who want to stay neutral. There's very few probably people who are drafted, but there is a majority. There's some who do want to join NATO. But the vast majority don't want the hate speech bill too. But again, the government are going to press ahead with it, so why wouldn't they press ahead? Even though Leo did say the other day, he did say it to him, but we all know Leo, you couldn't trust Leo, you couldn't trust any of them. Because let's be fair, they will sell their grandmother if they got away with it. We see them time and time again selling the country out. The fishermen, we see them selling them out all the time. The firefighters too, they're going to sell them out too, because at the end of the day they don't care. They don't care about Joe and Paddy and Mary. They don't care. They want to get rid of them. That's as that. And this is our government. Well, I suppose at the end of the day we have ourselves to blame because we did folk them in. But as I say, neutrality is the only policy the state should have. It's the beneficial policy for everybody in the state. And being a part of no military alliance is beneficial to Ireland in a way too, because we are brokers of peace. Even as a neutral country, I said it time and time again, many times throughout the year, last year too, that Ireland should try and broker peace between Russia and Ukraine. As a neutral country, as a country that has nothing to gain, that's in the middle of a talk. But again, the Irish government didn't seem to give a shit. You think they would say, we're trying to have a discussion between Russian diplomats and Ukrainian diplomats in Dublin and try and work things out, or try and find a peaceful way out, or try and find a solution. But no, it's just, they don't care. That's usually what a neutral country should do. Be intermittently, in the middle, basically. There's nothing to gain by not on both sides, basically. That's what neutrality is about, being now talking to both sides and engaging with both sides, but not taking one side, basically. And that's what neutrality is all about. It's about talking to both sides and keeping avenues open on both sides. That's the way the state should be in any times of crisis or times of war. And obviously, being a beacon of hope and peace, as Ireland has obviously been in the last 60 years of United Nations security, United Nations service to war and core countries in the Congo, bringing stability, not in the Congo, but in Lebanon and other countries that have faced hard times. Irish troops are wet there. So, again, it's just, I'm very, my opinion won't change on it, that we should keep out of it. That's our best policy. Because let's be fair, we have to call a spade a spade. If we were going to join NATO, this is just the be all and end all here. If we were going to join NATO, it would have cost us billions a year to send. First of all, to give to NATO, we would have had to give, fuck knows how much money, and something they have to come from somewhere. The money, the billions a year, maybe 20 billion a year, or God knows how much, 4 billion, 6 billion. Would have to come from somewhere. So either come from the health service or come from the housing service, so basically less housing for people, or it come from homelessness services or in Garda Síochána, things that the country be willing to equipment as it is already, but but it would have to come from somewhere, the money, and and people wouldn't be happy if we had to give 4 billion to NATO a year or something like that. It would be a good bit out of the exchequer. I'm sure people know themselves. It have to come from somewhere, either high taxes, either increased taxes and stuff like that. It'll come at a cost, basically. And the same, we have to increase military spending, because $1 billion a year, literally Luxembourg spends more on its defence spending than Ireland. $1 billion a year is nothing compared to any other NATO country. They're paying upwards of maybe 10 to 9 to maybe 20 billion a year. And simply put, the money would have to come from somewhere again, and there had to be cutbacks in services, austerity measures to fund the defence forces. But yeah, that's my opinion. Thank you.